Jake, I've been on your job a couple times where you installed no windows and doors and then did a blower door test.
Yep, big green box.
Big green. It blew my mind when I saw that. It was the Prairie something.
Yeah, hybrid house.
Hybrid house,
Yep.
that's it. On this house, we did some similar things, but I did install my windows and doors. But I want to do a test like you do often, where we blower door it before any sheetrock gets on. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, we have the trust but verify mantra, right? Mm-hmm. And if we're going to verify, there's no use in verifying when it's too late, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So if we have these goals of, say, our scopes of work are 1 ACH 50 or below, if we're going to get that number, we have to know that we're going to be able to get that number before we cover everything up, before we've ruined our chance to get to that number. So
that's right.
Why don't we test it now before we go too far?
It makes a lot of sense because, you know, the codes have changed and almost everywhere in the U.S., if you haven't already, you're about to be required to have a blower door test before you get that final certificate of occupancy. And how much will you be concerned, the pucker factor, if you're doing that test the day before or 2 days before your clients move in and all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, I didn't pass or I didn't make the standard that I was supposed to make. So in the build show today, Jake Bruton is going to show us how to do a mid-construction blower door test, which I'm telling you, this is totally going to change your building practices and allow you to really understand what's happening behind the scenes in your build. Today's build show, mid-construction blower door. Let's get going.
Let's see if we panic. Okay, full disclosure, Matt had to leave. Matt had something else he had to do, so the boss is away. We are going to play. So what we've done here is we've went ahead and set up the blower door. We've prepped the building as if we were going to do some sort of certification blower door test. We've made sure all the windows are locked. We've filled traps with water. We've connected everything as if we were going to go ahead and run all the way through the process for a full end of building blower door test. We really don't care what the number is, other than we're trying to make sure that we are meeting our goal and we're trying to figure out where our leaks are so that we can fix them, right? So we're going to walk around the entire building. We're going to check things like plumbing penetrations, electrical penetrations, and HVAC penetrations. We're going to walk to every window on the inside. We're going to make sure that when it's latched, it actually isn't like whistling or anything like that. I like to lick the back of my hand and move around the window. If it feels like maybe there's some air moving through it, you can find discrepancies in weather stripping. Sometimes when we're installing windows, we operate them and then we don't get things put back together properly, or the installers might rack something. We also are poking lots of holes and then maybe a different crew is coming around and sealing. There are things that happen. We have a spot back here where we have a ton of wires going from inside the house to the garage. The garage is outside of our air barrier, therefore it is outside, even though we would think of that as being indoor space. I always try to get people to go, okay, but if we didn't put a garage door on that space, that would just be a carport, and we would all acknowledge that that is outdoor space. So just because it has a garage door does not make it inside the environment. We don't want anything from out there to be inside here. So therefore, we have to have an air control layer between us and the garage. The garage happens to be on that side of the wall. We have a whole bunch of wires, a whole bunch of holes, and we found 4 holes that were not sealed. So we went ahead and sealed those up. We could find that with the blower door. We also could find that with a visual inspection. So now we're going to run another blower door test that we found that. We got a blower door number of about 0.74. The building volume here is 36,000 cubic feet of air. We're getting about 450 CFM. So what I want to do now is show you what kind of things we might be chasing. We are going to turn the blower door on, and then I'm going to show you what a 2-inch hole would look like on that CFM. So let's do that now. Okay, so we have pulled one piece of tape over a hole I drilled in our temporary front door. Don't tell anybody I did that. We're the only ones here, so I can do it. We drilled a 2-inch hole, we reset the fan, and now we are running at 0.84. So we went up by a few percentage points. And if we look at that as a flow rate as just a CFM, we went from 450 CFM to 500 CFM. So that 2-inch hole increased by about 50 CFM. Air movement and airflow is a liquid. That's a liquid moving through there. So you have to, not a liquid, a fluid. So you have to think of it as that round hole through that opening is going to move differently than it would through a different opening. So we can't just make it a simple equation that we're chasing a 2-inch hole when we have a 50 CFM increase. So you might not be chasing that hole throughout the rest of the house if we gained another 50 CFM at our next blower door test. But let's do it again. Let's open another 2-inch opening and see what we get. So when we pull another piece of tape, the fan and the manometer, they know the pressure in the house, they know the pressure outside, they go ahead and adjust. The fan will ramp up and down. You'll notice that the pressure on the manometer keeps adjusting to try to get to where it's reading at negative 50 pascals of pressure. Now we are at 550. So again, it gave us another 50. That's kind of what we expect because it's the same size hole. And so if we go back to ACH, now we are at 0.9 ACH 50. So we're still really great. We're still below 1 ACH 50. I think if you are at 1 ACH 50 or below at your final, that is a remarkable achievement. We have to remember that this type of measurement is not particularly that precise. It's air moving through a fan, and depending on test conditions and who's doing it and how well the door is installed, you're going to get a different reading every day of the week with somebody else doing it. So that's why we just say around 1 is really good. Let's pull both of the other pieces of tape. We'll get 2 more 2-inch size diameter round holes, and let's see what we get then. Okay, with 4 2-inch holes open on a building that went from right above passive house, we went from 0.7 ACH 50 to 1 ACH 50, and we went from 450 CFM worth of air flowing out of the building to 620 CFM. In reality, what we've done here is we've taken an excellent performing building and made it a still really, really great performing building. And that's something that we need to understand here, is that those 4 2-inch holes made almost no difference in the performance of the building. So when we're talking about chasing things and we're talking about using a tool like this to trust but verify at this point in the building, we're really looking for minute problems. And those minute problems, once we have insulation, once we have drywall, once we have paint and trim and finishes, flooring, all those sorts of things, those are going to be impossible to find at that point. And that's why we're running a blower door test. So for my company, since say 2017, we've adopted the strategy of 3 blower door tests. It's number 1, at this stage, we have windows, but no other penetrations most times. So Matt's a little further ahead of what we normally would do at this point. We wouldn't have our mechanical penetrations in, we wouldn't have electrical or plumbing. We normally would just do windows and envelope. Number 2 would be after we have our HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and most times insulation, because we're able to get to most everything still. And then our final before our HERS rater or our BPI technician comes in, because we want to know the number one last time before we get there, just in case there's anything we need to touch. And I will tell you that that system that we've adopted, along with, not just by itself, but along with deliberate construction methods, not terribly expensive because we're still doing things for modest customers, and with good design up front where we're considering the idea that someone's going to have to do this, Those two things and the blower door testing has made it that since 2017, my company, Aero Building, has not had a house test over 1 ACH 50 at final. Not a single one. This is not that difficult. It's not that scary. They do not put things in the code that are unachievable. I will say that again. It is in the code. It is not unachievable. They can't put things in there that are impossible. I know that the first time you have to do it, it seems like it's going to be impossible. It is absolutely achievable, and if you take a little bit of time, you slow down and you consider what you're doing before you get there, and you think about what's happening, it is totally achievable. And if you take the time to test along the way and verify that you're making the right progress, it will be simpler every single time you do it, and you'll see your team members start to buy in right away. So we are going to send it back to Matt to let him wrap this up. Thanks.
All right, y'all, super helpful to have Jake here on site and teach us all those tips and tricks for doing a mid-construction blower door test. I think what we found here is that all the time and effort pre-planning, you know, from the monopoly framing to the air sealing details between the foundation and the framing, doing the belt and suspenders approach like I really talk about a lot, it means that not only have we met code, we've blown away code, and I'm not worried about, oh my gosh, what's my final blower door test going to be? It should, in fact, be a little bit tighter than this once the drywall actually gets installed in this house, which will be another layer. It's that extra belt, suspenders, and an elastic waist. So the other thing I learned on this house, I got to say I'm really impressed with the Pella package. We've been really tight. We did a push-out casement. I don't know if that meant anything additional benefit-wise from an air sealing perspective, but I really like that. You know, there have been several times over the years, I can think of lots of times when frankly I've been really disappointed with the window and door package in terms of how we did on a blower door test. You know, I've seen a lot of leaky sliding glass doors, and from what I can tell on this Pella, we are really tight. I really like that. As a side note, you know, a lot of times companies that are window door manufacturers that are based in the north, they tend to have roots in clients who'd be really mad if snow or wind was blowing through those doors in the wintertime. So I think there's some inherent benefits to a company like that. But anyways, if you're not familiar with Jake's work, Jake Bruton is an incredible builder. He builds both in Kansas City and in Columbia, Missouri. His company is Aero Building, AAROW. He's shooting videos on a weekly basis over at thebuildshow.com, so you can catch up on that. And he also has a terrific podcast with fellow Build Show Network contributor Steve Basic and our friend Peter Yost. So go check out the Unbuild It podcast on all the places, but also on Build Show Network. Guys, super fun. Come see us here live at Build Show Live here in November, buildshowlive.com. Otherwise, hit that subscribe button. We've got new content here every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.